is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome for the very last time to the NFL Pick 4 show this week, talking every single game that's left on the NFL slate. Going to be an awesome one. 4 games going down as usual. Bringing in Rich Hribar from Sharp Football Analysis, John Daigle from NBC Sports, a Good Football Show podcast. We're talking 4 games. We're breaking format, obviously. We're going to focus on every single one. No reason to run them back because we already knocked out the 4 instead of focusing on the 3 as we did throughout the season. You guys know, seriously, at this point, 18 weeks, whatever it is, longest season ever. You guys know the format, how it goes down here. Let's look back. Just take a peek as far as last week. Daigle, any thoughts as far as a super wild card weekend?
We should probably ban the 7th seed because those teams were not pretty. Even the games that were good, like the Bills-Patriots game, like we think that's good because the football was good. The football wasn't good from both sides, but on one side, it was a lot of fun to watch. So overall, even like the competitiveness clearly lacked. Lots of bad games, lots of duds, even the Bucks-Eagles game. Really big dud there. So I think these 4 games, though, we should be really excited about. Some rematches, yes, but also just the offenses feel like they at least deserve to be here against one another. Lots of less chess components in these matchups.
Going to go out on a limb and say there's no chance they retract the 7 seed because money matters. They play the games for money.
Not only that, but like, who knows? They'll probably just add a couple weeks and throw an 8th seed in there.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Rich, your thoughts as far as a super wild card weekend and any big takeaways?
No, yeah. I mean, pretty much all the chalk happened. Even the one upset was a chalk pick. So yeah, we kind of really didn't have that kind of feeling of we said, oh, it was such a big NFL season filled with parity. Anything can happen in these games. And no, that was not the case at all. Basically everything we thought that had a real high probability of chance of happening did happen last week. Even the end of the Cowboys game, which like was default, like I guess the best game of the weekend. Even the end of that game felt like watching like an NBA game where like a team is just fouling and like dudes are splitting free throws. It wasn't like it was like a great back and forth game. It was pretty like kind of gross affair with all the penalties and kind of like botched plays. It was just the closest game of the weekend.
The quarterback draw was the best thing to ever happen to the Cowboys because now no one remembers they were down 23-7 at some point. They were getting run out of their own stadium at one point.
If Garoppolo didn't get hurt, like that game would probably fall apart.
If Nick Bosa and Fred Warner don't get hurt, like do the Cowboys even score a second time?
Did we ever get clarification? Was that like a Dak audible or is that like the actual? Was that the play?
Yeah, like they acknowledge they practiced that.
But wait, but were they aware of the clock?
Yeah, I mean, typically everyone says like you run it with 16 seconds or more. Basically, like every NFL like talking head on TV this week. But you know, and you don't try to run for an extra 12 yards. But I saw someone say like it would have added win probability to like the play itself, like the next play, but it still was. They still needed like a long shot play to cash in.
Yeah, I mean that was a wild way, and of course the holding that's kind of screwed the time as well too. And
they also remember they were running that play when they talk about having practiced it under the utmost perfect conditions. Like they hadn't actually practiced when they're scrambling in a must-win contest with refs and fans getting in the way. Like that, like the ref, even how far he was behind the play, they didn't practice these things, so they actually were not prepared for it, despite telling you they were prepared for it.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm sure they learned their lesson and they'll figure it out for next year.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys had the ball a drive before that. They had the ball with the same score with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left, and went out of downs. Like they had plenty of shots before that.
Yeah, and like the hold on defense kind of mucked things up as well too, where it seemed completely unnecessary as well. If you kind of watch the replay, like, the play was going to be dead anyway. The tackle was going to be made, but
the most penalized team in the NFL during the regular season somehow had a bunch of penalties in the postseason.
And complained about it.
And then Dak apologized, but yeah, he retracted it. Yeah, he apologized via tweet, like said, "I'm sorry." Like,
Dak had a shot to win the game with 2 minutes to go. Like he doesn't deserve to take any shots at the ref or get. I mean, come on, man.
We spent an hour and a half last week breaking down all 6 games. Hopefully, we're not around for another hour and a half. By the way, somebody in the YouTube comments, shout out to this person, they summarized the hour and a half. They said, well, what are they talking about? It's football. It's the playoffs. Anyone can get hot. I guess we can just say that, Rich, right? Just like get out of here.
Call the show. Let's talk about other things. Anyone can get hot. That's play who you want.
But what else than that as far as analysis? That's kind of true, sort of, I guess. It's not wrong, not helpful, but yeah, we can always
The exact plays we may not have gotten exactly, but I think we painted the game scripts pretty well, actually. I felt rather confident, and that's even as someone who had money on the Patriots and Eagles covering. We also knew how those items could get out of hand, and those games did get out of hand. And it wasn't like surprising they got out of hand. It's like everything went one direction, and we expected that could have happened. The only thing that we knew is that, the Steelers weren't going to make it happen, and they did not. So I think, yeah, everything was pretty predictable, honestly.
Is Mason Rudolph really going to be the starting quarterback for Pittsburgh? That's not happening, right?
Cable is,
he's out of control.
There's no way that's happening, right?
This guy.
I still kind of think they're going to screw this up and he'll be the starting quarterback, but there is one beat reporter hammering the drum, and only one. No one's following along in his path. It's one individual.
Yeah. And he was doing it during the season too, mind you.
Yes.
Like the Steelers have figured everything out on January 19th. Like they're just all in on Mason Rudolph.
Pittsburgh beat reporter / like Mason Rudolph's like agent or something. I can't believe that's possible, but whatever. We'll see. We're talking about DFS this week. We're setting the groundwork. This is kind of a first look. We're recording on a Wednesday night. Not all the information is complete. We're going to do our best to figure it out. Worth mentioning before we kind of break it down game by game, the sites are doing stuff a little bit differently. The biggest contest on DK, shout out to DK. Their biggest contests are the 4-game slate. I do appreciate that. Of course, you can play 2 and 2. Yahoo, I think, is like a $500,000 contest, just Sunday only, like $250. Both of them without any rake at all. $250 as far as Saturday only. They do have like a $50,000 like full day slate. FanDuel kind of took that route as well, where their biggest contests are Saturday only and Sunday only. They do have a 4-gamer. It's not as appealing as far as the prize pools, but there are decent enough prize pools, I suppose. And Rich, it sounds like you're with me. You prefer the 4-game, contest as opposed to the 2 and 2. I'm gonna still play them begrudgingly, but I want the 4 games to work with.
They know they've got our rake. They get away with murder. But it's the last kind of like real like legitimate slate of the season. So like, having 4 games, because we're going to go down to just have the 2 games next week. Then you've obviously just got a showdown for the Super Bowl. I was looking forward to just having more of this. I'm someone that plays more on FanDuel, and it's just not optimal. The tournaments aren't really good on the Saturday through Sunday. And the pricing is significantly worse on FanDuel this weekend than it is on DraftKings. So I'm very sad to just shuffle a bunch of money over to DraftKings and try to get my fix in one last time.
I play the 2-game slates, but admittedly have not been doing well at them. You have to just get everything right. It's almost like a showdown slate. I hate showdowns because you have to get everything right. Whereas, this past week, the 6-game slate, that was fun because we had 3 days of late swapping. And like, that's kind of where we take advantage because everyone forgets to late swap. And so again, for the 4-game slate, we're going to have 2 days and it's going to stretch across 4 island games of late swapping. So really looking forward to it.
All right, first game, we're going to break down the first game. It's going down amongst the 4, Cincinnati at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 4-point favorite here, 3.5 actually, if you want to get all technical. 47 as far as the total. The big storyline in this game, obviously, is Derrick Henry. Not officially back, but the presumption is he'll be back. John, speaking of pricing, Henry on FanDuel is $9K, but he's 7.5 on DK. So whatever sort of concerns you may have as far as workload and all that kind of stuff, and it is do or die as far as, you got to win in advance, that kind of thing. And his body is well rested outside of his foot, maybe screwed up. We'll see. Hopefully he's fine. But we got to start at Derrick Henry. You're assuming he's going to play. We'll adjust otherwise. But as of right now, the presumption is that Henry's going to go.
It would be better if it was a late swap opportunity too for Sunday, but this is the first kickoff of the week. Thus, everyone's going to have the Henry information by the time kickoffs happen, whether it's the second FFPC contest or DFS slate. So we will get the news no matter what. And what we do know is that through week 8 with Derrick Henry available, Titans averaged 28 points per game, 5.5 yards per play. Whereas from that point forward without Henry, 21 points per game and 4.8 yards per play. I know Rich has some other splits he'll get into since the Titans have literally just never really had everyone on the field and it's all over the place. But also what we do know is that Julio came back somewhat healthy in week 18. You could also say maybe it was because they played the Texans, but AJ Brown had an 18.7% target share in that one alongside Julio, who led the team with 9 targets. But if you look overall at the 6 games they played together, AJ Brown still led the team with a 33.5% target share in those 6 other games. So I still like expanding out and trying to look at the full picture of it and saying, okay, despite getting 3 fewer targets than Julio Jones in week 18, I still want to be overweight on A.J. Brown here, especially since the Bengals permitted the third most passes of 20-plus yards against them this year. What the Bengals do to counteract on offense, that's another situation we have to talk about it. Just like with the Raiders last week, we were scared they weren't going to push it, and they really didn't. But overall, that's how I see the Titans attacking in this one, whether Derrick Henry's available or not. I think we could get some success from Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, Rich, start with Henry and then kind of branch out from there as far as the Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I focus on Derrick Henry. The appeal here is more of what he does for the lifting all tides of the offense. I mean, yeah, like Dave said, they only played 120 offensive snaps this season with all of Derrick Henry, Arthur Juan, and Julio Jones on the field this season. And on those snaps, they averaged 6.9 yards per play in positive EPA per play. They actually played 28% of their offensive snaps with all 3 of those players off the field. Which is crazy amount. And they only had 4.0 yards per play and negative EPA per play on those plays. So just having Derrick Henry back and all these pieces back in the offensive totality does mean a lot, even if he is whatever, somewhat limited. And he's got a steel plate in his foot, he said, which is actually probably pretty scary because he's hard. He's such a Terminator already. Now we're going to make him part machine, which is pretty scary. But yeah, I'm with Daigle. I kind of like the idea of Ryan Tannehill, especially on DraftKings where he's priced. Coming off his best game of the season to close the year. We talked about some of those kind of like weird splits. Only 10.9% of his dropbacks came with all 3 of those players in the field. And he averaged 9.4 yards per pass attempt on just plays where he had Julio Jones and Arthur Juan available. He averaged 8.2 yards per pass attempt. So just having the full complement of weapons means a lot. He had 30% of his dropbacks, Ryan Tannehill, without, either of those guys on the field, which is a significant amount. You think like a third of your dropbacks. I'm going to take that as confirmation bias that I would have been right on Ryan Tannehill all along, even though I was completely wrong. It was a terrible fantasy pick this season. But we've got time for redemption to close things out here at the end of the year. I do like Ryan Tannehill a lot, especially on DraftKings.
Yeah, he is the 7th most expensive quarterback, which means, he's just cheaper than everybody with the exception of whoever starts for San Francisco, be it Garoppolo or Lance on DK specifically. And I guess, well, if you're going to pair him with a receiver, who's your preference? I mean, obviously money matters, Brown's the favorite guy, but do you think Julio is still, I thought he was dead, but he probably his best game of the year last week, or not last week, week 18, I suppose, whatever it was, week 17, the last time he played, I forget.
Week 18, which feels like a long time ago. It was just 2 weeks ago. Feels like forever ago. The issue on this slate, and as I mentioned, I'm still trusting A.J. Brown's overall workload in those 6 full games that they played together. They played a couple other games together, but A.J. Brown or Julio Jones left injured, so the targets then got dispersed accordingly. But this slate is more about, remember, this is, especially if we're talking the 4 game, which we all agreed we love, like then you have to start with a onesie position like Ryan Tannehill. And I love Ryan Tannehill, but then you also remember you're going against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen that everyone's waiting for Sunday night. And so you're starting at the onesie position, and then you're also throwing in A.J. Brown, in my opinion. In that case, like that's already 2 spots down. So late swapping is of the utmost importance because if your quarterback fails in this slate, it's almost like you failed pretty much, and you're left scrambling at other positions. So Ryan Tannehill is dangerous just given the overall landscape, but we also know he can provide the rushing upside, as he's shown time and time again, soaking away those touchdowns, even inside the 5-yard line on RPOs from Derrick Henry. So he does have similar upside at a discounted salary as opposed to the others, just in case one or the other fail and Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. Because that's really what we're talking about is like, how close can you get to those two in a matchup everyone's expecting to shoot out?
Have the internet doctors weighed in yet as far as Derrick Henry and how effective they think he may or may not be? Is there a consensus on that? If you guys see anything, or kind of stay tuned, because 7.5 on DK, he's the most expensive running back still, but 7.5. We've paid, 8, 9, 10 for Henry at certain times this year. It feels like it's kind of baked in, Rich. No, or do we have an official read as far as metal plate sounds serious? That sounds like a big deal in your foot.
I mean, he's 9K on FanDuel. So you are paying for it a little bit there. On the site you'd more optimally want to play him. Yeah, because you figure if they are going to limit his snaps, right, like it would be like in the passing game, some of that little bread and butter he got early in the year where he was, getting, averaging a career high receptions, which is still only 2.3 per game, losing maybe that. But, if he's healthy enough, like the money touches are going to be his for sure. Like if they get near the end zone, he's going to be getting the ball, especially if he responds well in game. And this is a go home situation. So like if his health wise is okay, I mean, they're not probably going to limit him. Like, I don't think that they will, unless it's like a real, like, kind of hindrance. Like, if he's going to be able to go, I'm just going to consider it that him be able to go. It's a terrible running back slate. So, like, you could, I mean, a big crooked number from any one of these running backs that we'll talk about could swing something this weekend. I mean, it's a great receiver quarterback slate. It's a pretty iffy running back slate. So yeah, I'm curious to see like kind of what tilts the tide this week. It felt really fitting that last week the highest scoring running back was Jerick McKinnon. Like in this season of seasons are all fantasy ghosts. It's been the year of fantasy ghosts. So I have the postseason lead off with Jerick McKinnon as the highest scoring running back. Just felt right. It felt like something was right about that.
I had 100% Derek Gore at 2%, and it went to the other backup running back. I was disgusted.
Yeah, you had the right thought process, and I had all three. I mixed, but I had more Williams than anything else, and unfortunately, the right lineups kind of line up. But that was a universal swap to McKinnon, and all of a sudden, you're shooting to the top, and nobody owned him, far as I can tell. I mean, he was like what 5% or less or something like that. Because we all thought it was Williams' backfield. It turns out, what did he have, a leg or a heel? And then he fumbled too. Like he didn't start.
Had the fumble.
Yeah, and then he fumbled, and he football died. Like that's it. Once you fumble and you have a leg or a toe, yeah, forget it. I knew it was over then. Yeah, John, feel free to jump over to the Bengals.
So the Bengals had 21 touchdowns this season of 20 plus yards, most in the NFL. Next closest team had 4 fewer. And we know opponents targeted their receivers at the league's highest rate, 64% against Tennessee. The Titans also permitted 8.3 yards per attempt, nearly 13 yards per catch, and the second most fantasy points to opposing wideouts. And so when we're talking about how we're going to attack this offense, like that's what it is. It's through their wide receivers. And so everyone gets excited about Joe Burrow. I do think I would actually say I know Joe Burrow is going to be more roster than Ryan Tannehill. I think he's actually going to be sneakily high. I think everyone's kind of getting on the idea that they want to attack the Titans secondary and consider them faux number 1 seeds, where in my opinion, I just consider them the better team overall, since we still have questions about like who the Bengals can beat outside of their one sterling matchup at the end of the year against the Chiefs. And so overall, like I am excited about the Bengals passing attack if we get there. Again, it always comes down to if we get there, but I still think the field is going to be higher on them than we should be.
And you pair him
with Burrow for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at Burrow. There's a reason all of his top scoring games this season came against teams that do what? Blitz. And blitz him particularly because some teams didn't that do blitz high. And the Tennessee is another team that I feel like there's just not a lot of ceiling opportunity here. I think Burrow will more or less be fine and like not bury, but I see it very similar to how it was last week, where he's more or less probably like a 17 to like low 20s guy. I think Tannehill is really easily in that striking range. I mean, Tennessee doesn't blitz. They're 28th in the league in blitz rate. So they're not going to really kind of put the pressure on him. We know they can run the ball, and the Trey Hendrickson practice today, but they're still going to be out with Mike Daniels and Larry Ogunjobi. And if the Titans are able to run the football, whether it be with Derrick Henry or Deontay Foreman or who else they have in the backfield, which they've shown that they're still capable of getting production out of those guys. I don't know if Burrow has like that 30-point ceiling this week, even though people are kind of glomming onto that. I like the pass catching pieces more than I like Burrow himself. He's probably the quarterback I feel the least confident of the weekend outside of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Interesting. Yeah, Burrow on FanDuel is 7.7. Tannehill is 7.3. Sounds like you guys favor Tannehill over Burrow. And on DK, a distinct difference in price: $800, 5.8 for Tannehill and 6.6 for Burrow. Rich, if you're going to pick one of those receivers, figure in ownership, presumed ownership. It's Wednesday night. We're not really sure. We're kind of sort of somewhat guessing. And if figure in the asking price as well, obviously Chase, Higgins, Boyd, and even Uzoma. Uzoma's been he's been a thing of late. Is he? I mean, what he caught at least 1 touchdown the previous week, maybe 2. I can't remember what it was,
just
but
1.
Yeah, and then Knox saw that and raised him. That's how that went down. But yeah, talk about the pass catchers there for Cincinnati.
Well, obviously, I mean, Chase, historic rookie season, started off the postseason right where he left off, becoming the 7th rookie ever to have a 100-yard game in his first, career playoff game. Jack Rabbit Jenkins, who I believe it legally changed now to Jack Rabbit, did not practice today, so keep eyes on that. Tennessee's already a team that, like John said, I mean, they face a lot of targets to wide receivers. They don't really have a lot of great personnel on the back end outside of Byard. So, I mean, if you can get the Chase, obviously he's a guy that's shown a ton of ceiling. Higgins has been like the more volatile option. He's had those like 3 top 5 weeks this season and then given you kind of like a bunch of uneven production. 2 of his worst games came to Raiders. And Tyler Boyd, who scored 4 games in a row. The ceiling isn't like massive, but Tennessee, was dead last in the NFL in guarding opposing slot receivers. And the last time we saw them on the field, another ghost of fantasy pass, Danny Amendola, hit them for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I like the pass catchers a lot. Uzoma's probably the one that objectively has like the worst draw, but he has been seeing some targets, 4 to 7 targets in each of his past 6 games. The Titans were really, really tough on tight ends this year, though. Second in yards per target, 4th in catch rate, and 2.7% touchdown rate, which was second in the NFL as well. They face guys like Travis Kelce, they face guys like George Kittle on their schedule. So Uzoma's probably like, you feel really good about cashing out your Uzoma tickets last week. I don't know if it's really an objectively great spot for him here.
Boyd is definitely how you get unique. We are seeing a little bit of a breakout in the end of the year too, even more so for Jamar Chase. Pelted him with 7 targets in the first half last week, season high 35% target share in that game. And if you exclude week 18, when he was playing minimal time with Brandon Allen to chase all those rookie franchise records, he's quietly put together 3 consecutive starts with double-digit targets and a 29% target share in that span. So we are seeing him emerge not only as like the downfield threat, but also the downfield threat with volume too.
The other thing to note as far as Uzoma, like typically it's, I'll just punt at tight end and it's only a 4-game slate. So there's only, tight end typically kind of a weak spot. And there's only so many tight ends that can actually do something. Maybe what if they all collapse? Well, it's a 4-game slate, but you got Kelce, Gronk, Kittle, Higbee, does things. Knox obviously is a touchdown threat. We see multiple touchdowns for Knox as well. So,
Saturday is gross. Saturday, you can do whatever the hell you want. If you're going to just do Saturday only, because it's Kittle and then just 3 dudes.
That was
So you could even, I would say if you're going to take a shot at tight end in this game, like Ferks is probably the better blind dart, but that's still very loose. Because just like I said, Kittle, we've seen like, and when we get to that game, he's a guy like his target share might be the same as these other 3 guys.
It's been terrible. Yeah, do you get points for pancakes? Kittle, three targets last time. I know he's a great blocker and all that. 7 before that, 2 and 3. That's his last 4 games. 3, 7, 2, 3 as far as targets. We'll talk about him soon enough, obviously. But yeah, I wasn't thinking about it in terms of the 2-game slate, but that's a good point.
Well, if you're playing Saturday only, it's this Josiah DeGuara or Kittle or Mercedes Lewis.
Uzoma reminds me of Dawson Knox of last week. Like I couldn't pull the trigger knowing he was the second game of the week. And I had, with all the tight ends, especially on Sunday and Monday, I couldn't pull the trigger at like a onesie position to have him Saturday night and just bust. And then of course he just blew up instead.
But at least Knox, like you could look at the body of work and say, "Oh yeah, this is the dude that led the position in touchdowns." Like
I was a coward, yeah.
But like Uzoma, like you still had to kind of take a step of faith with him last week based on kind of his lower target share and the Raiders matchup, and you got there, you hit. I even took him with my last pick in that pool we were talking about drafting last week, and I'm still not expecting a lot here just based on the matchup in particular. And then, like I said, maybe kind of thinking like the field's going to be a little ahead of themselves on Burrow.
Mm-hmm. We got anything else this game, boys? Or moving on?
Is anyone going to play Mixon?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't mean to ignore him, but like you can, like certainly, like he can get 25 touches in this game. Like and if nobody's playing him, sure.
He's the only guy we really didn't talk about.
He suffered that injury at the end of the game, but also he hasn't been on the practice report, so I imagine he's good to go for this one.
Who's what side are you guys on from a Vegas perspective? Any takes there? Tennessee -3.5, 47 total. Any leans for anybody?
I like the Titans. I think the Titans cover.
You gotta lay the hook, man. 3.5. That's how they get you.
I know. I'm laying the hook. I've already laid the hook, so I'm laying the hook.
Rich, you got anything, or it's just kind of?
I don't feel great about this one because I don't think I think both these teams are kind of. They're in the position that they're in, but I don't know if it's really kind of like one of these teams is going to be in the AFC Championship game, and I don't know.
That doesn't feel right.
I guess I would prefer it to be the Bengals, but I don't feel strongly about really either of these teams right now.
Yeah,
the Titans have that body of work. They've beaten all these teams in the playoffs. They beat both the Chiefs, they beat the Bills, they beat the Rams on the other side. They have the league's best record against winning teams this year. So they are battle proven.
Yeah. For some reason, RotoGrinders office is in Nashville. Producer Devin's listening to me, and he's a big Nashville fan, Tennessee fan, and I've not given them credit all season long. I was like, they're the worst 1 seed in our lifetime, but that's probably maybe a little hyperbolic, but still, should they really? The game is Buffalo and Kansas City. That should be the AFC Championship. We can't jump in and change that at this point. I guess the games are already set.
It also seems to be common thought that the Titans don't deserve to be here, or don't deserve to be the number 1 seed. That's why I think they're just getting a little too much steamed by the public.
Yeah, that's probably on me.
Bengals
I'm probably wrong. By the way, game plays according to the Blitz. Shout out Derek Hardy, the Blitz game factors. This is the second lowest. It's pretty clear like where the projected plays are. We'll talk about Tampa and LA in a second. 133.2 projected plays. That's a good number. Cincinnati, Tennessee, 122.8, not particularly appealing. Right below them is the next game, 121.8, one full play less as far as the projections when you consider pace. San Francisco versus Green Bay, 47 is a total. This line opened at a 4.5-point line. It's moved to Green Bay favor by 6, getting that bye week. And Jimmy G is allegedly dealing with a hand. He's dealing with a shoulder. He was evasive when they asked him about it. I don't know. There's some sort of speculation that he may not even play this weekend. We shall see. But John, I'll throw it to you. We'll start with the San Francisco side. I guess we're going to assume that Jimmy G is starting until otherwise noted.
It is very much the Holy Grail. Is that what it is? Yeah, Holy Grail meme of it's just a flesh wound. Like Jimmy G's out here with no arms and they don't care. There's no way in hell they're going to start Trey Lance no matter what happens. 49ers, as we know, it's just a different matchup than last time. 49ers closed -3 last time they played. It was on the road. Now I believe last I checked, they're 6-point dogs, but Elijah Mitchell didn't play. He wasn't even the starting running back really at that time. Deebo Samuel wasn't playing running back. Josh Norman and rookie cornerback Diamador Lenore were the team's starting cornerbacks, and Juwan Jennings didn't play a single offensive snap in that game. Whereas we've seen now the past couple of weeks, especially, and this was first pointed out by Sharp Football's Dan Pizzuta, who noted that the 49ers are running more 11 personnel to get Juwan Jennings on the field more because they've been more efficient at adding Deebo Samuel to the backfield, keeping Elijah Mitchell on the field at all time, essentially keeping a running back without a lead blocker out there. And now we know that last week, for instance, they ran 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 49% of their snaps against the Cowboys. Packers actually this year faced the highest rate of 11 personnel and allowed 5 yards per carry against 11 personnel. And since we know what the 49ers want to do, we know the Packers, that's where they struggle against the run. We know the 49ers not only want to do that, but they also want to run the ball. I think that's kind of what we were expecting here. It would be easier to predict this game or to lay the land if we knew exactly, like Garoppolo, like if he was at least at full strength, because that's what I'm worried about, like them turning into a more quick passing attack. But overall, I think we should expect points on both sides of the ball here.
Rich, jump in here as far as San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers, with what they've been able to do with Deebo Samuel at the end of the season, going to 11 personnel is because you still have to match that personnel as if they're going to come out without Deebo Samuel in the backfield. And that's what's made that personnel set so effective, for the 49ers. It's really kind of lays out this explosive run game versus a team that's 28th in the NFL in explosive runs allowed in the league. And they only face 2 teams in the top 5 in DVOA in the run so far this season. So they're getting another one here with the 49ers. It all depends on, this is another one of these situations that we talked about with the Eagles last week and with the Patriots. If the 49ers don't weather the storm early in this game and they fall behind, it's a wrap. It's a wrap because they're going to have to stay in balanced offense, especially if Garoppolo is going to play banged up. He was awful in the second half of that game, whether it be by injury or just the amount of pressure the Cowboys are putting on him. 5 of 11 and after halftime for 39 yards in the second half. And he almost gave them that game back. If it wasn't for like kind of all the penalties and the Dallas futility on offense and wasting some opportunities. I mean, the 49ers were lucky to get out of there based on the way Garoppolo played in the second half. They cannot put the game into his hands this weekend, especially with the Packers now getting all of these guys back. Darius Smith is going to play. Jair Alexander is going to play. Merciless Whitney's going to play. Like all these guys are going to be back for the Packers. And Aaron Rodgers is a guy like you better have your best defense too against him the way he's played the back half of the year. And you're coming in with Nick Bosa, who practiced today with concussion. Fred Warner's got he said it's the same ankle injury he had that forced him to miss a game early in the season. Like they are going to have to get up and kind of stay in neutral game script here. So they fall behind double digits like we saw last week with those 2 teams that we were saying, hey, they've got to keep this kind of game script. That's what the 49ers have to do here. And if they don't, it's going to get south in a hurry.
Do you have the Kittle routes last week or of late? Like what percentage of passes is he blocking on?
No, it's still happening. That's a complete myth. The Kittle blocking thing is it?
Myth.
Yeah. On the past 4 games, He's run a route on 109 of 125 team dropbacks.
Okay.
He's out there running routes. He's just been, so over the stretch, he's been targeted a single-digit percentage of time per route in 3 of his past 4 games. After he was targeted on 27% of his routes prior. I don't know if it's a defensive thing, if teams are playing him differently, or if just the play calling is differently, but this narrative that he's such a great blocker, it's hurting him, is pretty much a myth.
Hey, call me out on it next time. I just
no, this isn't you, Dean. This is a consensus.
I was just doing it though. When I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
We're just asking about it.
Yeah, it's no. It's a consensus take that he's pass blocking, but he's not. He's out here running routes, man. He's getting that exercise that we talk about. But we've seen this happen with Kittle over the course of his career too. Like, he's also capable of just being the guy in the slate that goes for 8 and 130 too.
Yeah.
And you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I say the price is good though to still bite. And on Saturday, he's by default, he's going to have a bunch of ownership on Saturday.
6-4 on FanDuel, 5-3 on DK. Like you said, there's basically no competition on DK as well. It feels like you said, nobody's got the floor to ceiling that Kittle has.
Right.
The floor is really, really rough, but the ceiling, he can go 150 and 2. That's possible as well. I believe we've seen something very similar to this season. And then there's Debo, who's just, we've never seen anything like this guy, somebody being used the way he's being used. Cordell Patterson, I suppose, to some kind of extent, maybe Percy Harvin in years past, not to this degree, not to this degree of success, certainly. John, what are we doing with Debo?
Perfect question. Again, this slate comes back to running back. So what you do at running back, where you pay down, if you pay down, is really going to dictate whether you can get up to Debo, since we're trying to pay up for a lot of receivers in the Chiefs-Bills game in particular. And there are some cheap outs we'll talk about when we get there. But yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to. Also, I don't think many are going to play Debo with George Kittle. And so that's one unique way to get there, even though it is expensive. But overall, we've seen Debo now as a running back. His average touchdown run has actually been from 16.5 yards out, and he's averaged 15 yards before contact on those runs. Just absurd efficiency and absurd play calling. Still a little bit of touchdown juice, but the fact he's still leading the team in routes run in that span tells you that he can have a blow-up game. So I think that's the route everyone's going to go in the 4-teamer. They'll probably play Debo over Kittle because it's significantly safer. But I still think, just given how poor the Packers have been against tight ends, or at least efficiency-wise, because they're still only facing league average in targets, 7 per game to opposing tight ends, I do think Kittle is probably the better contrarian play on the 4-game slate.
Rich, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. I like that angle. Debo, he's just going to stick it to me all year. He's just so hard for me to play always at his price, and he always gets there. Daigle said, it's so hard for me. I'm so pragmatic in this stuff. And a player like Debo just breaks my brain, the dude is 5th in the NFL in receiving yards, but he's 43rd in routes run. He's got 15 touchdowns and only 3 of them are inside of 10 yards. He's had more than 6 targets in just 1 of his past 10 games. It's just always such a mental hurdle at his price for me to click the button, especially when I'm like, oh, Cooper Kupp's there or Devontae Adams is there. These safe, kind of reliable guys, these Gibraltars, and he just keeps getting there every week, man. Just every
you can't just assume a guy's going to have a 50-yard touchdown every single week, but that's what he's doing basically.
Just every week. He's such a beast, man. He's have you seen that with a game on the line too? They're calling run plays for him.
Yeah, I would too.
We talked about it last week, given how poor the Cowboys had been in rushing defense against poor rushing attacks. And, if the stats we mentioned earlier come to fruition, the 49ers, of course, have to win, or at least be in a competitive game throughout, because if they get behind, this doesn't work. But even pairing Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel, if you can get there, and also getting off Kittle is a contrarian way to get exposure towards Debo as well, because those are the 2 guys, especially with Jimmy Garoppolo injured. If it is a favorable game for the 49ers, you could play those together and hopefully get rushing touchdowns from both, as you did last week.
Mitchell 7-3 on FanDuel, more appealing price on DK at 5.8, but of course the way he plays, he's a better played player on FanDuel.
You need a 100-yard bonus on DraftKings. Well, the slates are so small now, you probably just need a rushing touchdown. You don't even need the 100-yard bonus anymore, but you also know he's not going to catch passes. That's the hard thing about DraftKings.
And I'll be honest, I've not run optimals yet because Wednesday night and we're so far from complete information. So I don't know how tight or loose the cap happens to be. I did check out some prices and I was we'll talk Tyreek Hill is really cheap on DK. Even Steph Diggs is getting a price discount as well too, which seems like the premier, game on, amongst the 4-game slate. We'll talk about that obviously in a second. Jump over to the Packers, Rich. Rodgers is there, well-rested team. Aaron Rodgers refuses to snap the ball until the clock's at 1, maybe 0. Just kills the clock all day. Like it kind of subdues like the potential upside in theory. Of course, they can potentially shoot out with some big plays, but that's always my fear, I guess. Not fear is the right word, but being pragmatic, right? I want the team that's having more plays because there's more chance of like fantasy points being collected. So I generally don't gravitate toward the Packers. And of course, the split in the backfield is kind of annoying. And obviously there's Adams right there. And then we added Randall Cobb. We're expecting him back. That's going to muck up, I suppose, to some degree, Lazard and MBS. And well, I wouldn't go beyond that. But talking about Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a little bit of the trade-off we used to always see with like Russ in Seattle. They're low volume because, Rodgers is so efficient, but they're also just really slow, like you said, which is always a problem. And both these teams can be pretty slow, and this game could get bogged down. That's definitely in the range of outcomes. I mean, the Packers are just frustrating too, because we know we're going to jam Devontae Adams in because he's getting, targeted at the third highest rate per route in the NFL. And he closed the season on a monster tear, 8 touchdowns over his final 7 games. But the rest is all kind of a grab bag. I do think there was a little bit of a signal that Aaron Jones was starting to like get back as like the lead back, but then, we kind of still just have this like kind of looming, entity and Algiers Dillon that just he could always steal some goal line carries. But there was a 2 games span there before they blew out the Vikings on that Sunday night game where Aaron Jones was operating as the lead back. AJ Dillon's touches were below 50% of the backfield touches, and Aaron Jones started that game on Sunday night against the Vikings, and then they just start blowing out Sean Mannion, and it's just all AJ Dillon the rest of the way, and then AJ Dillon in week 18. So it's very loose. It's a very flimsy proposition to say, oh yeah, week 16 and 17 showed us they're going to go back to Aaron Jones. But I also think it's a matchup that also just suits Aaron Jones better because he can catch the football out of the backfield a little bit better. Not that AJ Dillon has been bad catching the football at all this season. He averaged 9.2 yards per catch and was effective when called upon. But, you see Aaron Jones get like those plays called for him in the red zone in the passing game. And, we haven't really seen that with AJ Dillon. And the 49ers are just so good against the run that it would seem to set up more of opportunity to kind of like use Aaron Jones, his versatility, and kind of getting him in space a little bit more. But like I said, that's very loose. Very not very fragile analysis there.
Yeah, well, you say it's loose, but also like this is a loose slate. Like whoever gets the Bucks, Packers, and Chiefs backfields right is going to win this slate. And so taking a chance on Aaron Jones probably wouldn't be like acceptable in your normal Sunday main slate, but on a 4-game slate, like take your chances. That's totally fine. It also makes sense. And this is why like Aaron Rodgers is a tremendous play, but also you need the 49ers to do their job. You need to like the pressure is not to matter. You need everything to come together for the offense. Otherwise, I do worry we just get like last week with Brady, just a dink and dunk like floor game from Rodgers where they just move the ball efficiently. And then it becomes AJ Dillon game script. And we really don't know what it was supposed to be between that backfield because, ever since Rodgers injured his toe in week 11, we've not only seen him awesome in the box score, but he's been amazing under pressure as well with 6 touchdowns and 0 picks in that time. And that's how the 49ers have essentially won. Like last week against the Cowboys, they generated a season high 22 pressures, 45% of Dak's dropbacks. Over the past 2 weeks, they've hit Stafford and Prescott a combined 27 times, which makes these Nick Bosa and Fred Warner injuries like so important to monitor as the week moves along here. But the 49ers also understand they can't play man coverage with their cornerbacks room, especially against speedsters like Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Alan Lazard, Devontae Adams, which is why I think they've leaned on majority cover schemes and cover 3 throughout the year. And we know a quarter of Rodgers' dropbacks this year came against cover 3, and he finished with a 76% completion rate for over 8 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Adams leads the team. 88 of his 166 targets this year have come against zone coverage, and Aaron Jones is next on the team with 36. Like those are the guys Rodgers would dink and dunk to, which again, that means he has a high floor, but we need the 49ers to push them. And that's where I have questions. And I think it can happen, especially because I think it can happen through the running game, but that's also like a weird game script that could go wrong on the second game of the slate very easily.
The running back split you guys are talking about, it's kind of baked into the prices. Pretty big discrepancy. We've seen it like kind of basically the same price on DK at some points throughout this year. On FanDuel, Jones at 7.5, Dillon at 6.1. So, some room in the middle, obviously. And on DK, Jones is 6.8 and Dillon is 5.1. Rich, absolute dart, assuming Cobb's good to go. Again, this is where we're at on a Wednesday night, but it looks positive. And that's Rodgers' guy. He trusts, he wanted him on the team, obviously. He's 3-1. He's 3-1 on DK. Is Cobb, you think, a usable punt?
Yeah, he could be in play. MVS didn't practice today because of a back injury, but keep eyes on that. Especially, you don't like when guys have DNPs when they're off a bye, and didn't play. That's always kind of concerning. Alan Lazard, he's been more touchdown or bust though. But if you look at it, he leads the team with 9 end zone targets over his past 10 games played. He has 3 more end zone targets than Devontae Adams over that span. So he has been kind of like the end zone foxhole guy, and he's been coming through, but has a high of 75 yards over that span as well. So you're not going to really get a lot of juice with it if you do get the touchdown.
Yeah, MVS, you're kind of shooting for that one big play, which certainly can happen. There's no reason to think why it can't. 5.5K on FanDuel. On DK, MVS is 4-3. Again, monitor his status. And you're right, it's a good point because, they are well rested. So typically they'll rest guys on a Wednesday, but maybe, you've been off for the last week. I presume they were off for a good bit, but maybe it's nothing. Who knows?
Well, he was limited on Tuesday and downgraded today, which makes it even more concerning. But like we saw with Tyreek and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even though that was on a Thursday, we could maybe that's maintenance program. So we'll see. But yes, right now I would lean towards being concerned about it.
All right. We got anything else in this game here, Rich?
That's it.
John?
I think that's it for me.
I think Green Bay blows them out. Who's with me? Green Bay's going to, that's what I'm hearing. You guys you're not saying it, but you're kind of saying it. Green Bay fully healthy. That bye is so crucial. San Fran kind of beat up a little bit. They beat Dallas. That's a good season. That's good. Their quarterback Garoppolo's got he's hopping on one leg right now.
I took 49ers +6 when it opened. It moved to 5. It got bet back up to 6. But again, I'm the person who took the Eagles and the Patriots, so take it with a grain of salt.
It definitely feels like one of these spots where the Niners are going to be like the go-to kind of dog again, especially given their history against the Packers in the playoffs. And everyone will have the Mostert game for a couple of years in their mind. And listen, they had that game earlier in the season. They pressed them. They were down 17-0, and they took the lead with 37 seconds to go. And Rodgers needed a couple real big plays. Devontae Adams set that game-winning field goal. So the Niners are definitely a team that's played this Packers team tough. And so maybe people dial in on that, but it does feel like an inevitable Rodgers season to me right now. I feel like the Packers are getting there this year.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at as well too. All right, let's move on.
Well, very quickly, you also have to ask, Devontae Adams had a 54% target share in that game. No other receiver had more than 3 targets. So you have to wonder if those are dispersed to the options we talked about as well.
All right, going to move on and talk about the Rams and the Bucks in just a second. Before we do that, we do want to thank our sponsor, Jock Market. Jock Market, stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange to buy and to sell shares of players in real time. For real money, download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50. How do you do that? You use the promo code GRINDERS, GRINDERS. Get this, if you do not turn a profit this week, Jock Market, they're going to cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market in the app or Play stores, or check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com. Again, use the promo code GRINDERS, 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. Rams are playing the Bucks. First game on Sunday, 48.5 is the total. The Bucks are currently at 2.5 to 3-point favorite, depending on where you're looking. And yeah, Uncle Lenny, he tweeted out that what was his tweet? I'll see y'all on Sunday or something like that. And you're not going to say that. He's not talking about from the sidelines, I wouldn't think. I'm assuming he's going to give it a go. Also worth noting, they're down a couple linemen currently. We want to monitor that as well, which seems at least somewhat important. Rich, I'll throw it to you as far as the Tampa Bay side. And I would assume Lenny would jump into the starting spot and kind of throw Vaughn away, and Bernard's probably the third down guy, but that's me just guessing. What do you think?
Well, Bruce Arians said last week, if he was going to be available on Sunday, that he would be back to be able to handle a full workload. So I would assume that's going to be the case whenever he's ready. And maybe that's why they didn't play him last week. Gio coming back does throw kind of a wrench in things, because when Lenny took over during the course of the season, it was after Bernard was hurt in this game, actually, when these teams played earlier in week 3. Remember, Gio operated as the third down back. He caught 9 passes. shredded his knee on a meaningless touchdown in garbage time as the Bucs were kind of coming back. And then Lenny kind of just took over and it never looked back. It kind of took the job. But they do also know kind of where their bread is buttered with Lenny. So I could see them kind of going back and just letting him have the full workload. A little bit of thorn here. Rams have been excellent, though, against the run basically this entire season. When these teams played earlier in the season, Brady was the leading rusher for the Buccaneers. We saw that again play out on Monday night with the Cardinals backs that were getting kind of, talked about. They couldn't do anything against on the ground. The 49ers, Elijah Mitchell, we talked about that game in week 18. They didn't run well on them either. 4th in the NFL in yards per carry allowed to running backs. This is kind of sets up to be kind of like a passing game for both sides. The Bucs have some injuries that are a little bit concerning. You talked about Tristan Wirfs being injured. That's a kind of a big loss. We saw his replacement come up and give up a sack to Ryan Kerrigan, who was not an effective pass rusher this entire season. Ryan Jensen's dealing with an ankle injury, but he came back and played basically the rest of that game. We'll have to keep monitoring those situations throughout, but Bucs are coming in a little bit banged up here. And I feel like I don't ever want to just go bet against Brady, but this feels like a spot where I feel like the Rams are undervalued again.
John?
Yeah, I worry that for DFS purposes, like last week, it's going to be a game, especially if he's under pressure, Brady, the entire time, where it is more dink and dunk, and we don't get the ceiling. Because what we've seen is that they have to turn, like Gio Bernard, who did look good, like Keyshawn Vaughn. They've had to turn their running back into the third receiver without Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown because Tyler Johnson ain't getting it done, can't earn targets, 8% target share despite continuing to run all these routes. We now know enough to know like he's not a factor. And Rashad Perryman just continues having drops every single week. So much so that I wonder if they just lose faith completely this upcoming game and then play Fournette and Bernard together and just treat them together as like the third receiver. And so that's kind of where I lean, actually. Not Brady so much, but also getting in on Fournette, getting ahead of the pack, even though I imagine a lot of people are going to play him. And then maybe in the 2-game slate, even sneaking in Bernard and Fournette lineups together.
We don't know about Grayson. I guess there's still a chance he can come back this week. Of course, there's Johnson and Perryman and Scotty Miller, and I guess Darden's lurking too. But Rick's the main guy. Oh, go ahead.
Someone who played Scotty Miller in the 3-game slate, I can tell you, do not play Scotty Miller.
Did he run a touchdown in it, or that was the previous week?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. He ran the 18-yard first down and then slid in bounds because that's what Scotty Miller does.
Yeah, there you go.
Jim Rat.
He's the first guy on the field, though. The last guy to leave as well. So Mike Evans, he's going to cost you a bit, but obviously the prize receiver, if not him, it's going to be Gronk. I suppose that's a pretty clear and obvious spot here. Rich, do you have a priority amongst those two as far as exploiting this Rams defense? Who's more likely to have a peak game? Is it Mike Evans or is it Gronk?
Yeah, I think you got to stick with Mike Evans. I mean, Daigle was on it last week. It just, they have to throw to him. They just have to. That's just where they are right now. And they did a really good job last week of moving him around and scheming him up. He played 22 snaps at left wide receiver, 10 in the slot. That's where he caught the touchdown against the cover 0 blitz. He ran 7 routes at right wide receiver. They know they have to get him the football. You saw him even catch some quick hitters and some screens. Like they're down to just him and Gronk. They just look at these guys. Tyler Johnson's not doing anything. He played 77% of snaps last week. Rashad Perryman is banged up. Scotty Miller, they're just down. This is where they are at this stage of season. So they have to, involve Mike Evans in the offense to the fullest and utmost capability that they can. Now, if I was the Rams, I would do opposite of what Jonathan Gannon did last week, and I would just use Jalen Ramsey to know that. But the Rams have only done that once this season, and it was against DK Metcalf in that Tuesday night game. We really can't count on that. That would be just guesswork. I just think Mike Evans is probably right now their best asset in terms of generating big plays in a game. They're going to need to generate big plays.
You got a similar take there, John, or you going to go the other way?
Yeah. Again, like Rich said, it would really come down to the Rams moving Jalen Ramsey around, which they haven't done. They primarily just left him in the slot, got intricate with them somewhat, but even when they played Devontae Adams, they really didn't throw Ramsey at Adams. So I don't know if they'll do that against Evans, who they used even as their first down running back. They would just put him out there and rather than running the ball in short down and distance, they would just send him on a curl route or slant and just feed him for 4 yards. And they usually don't do that because that's all they have now. They have Gronk, they have Evans, that's it. So if Fournette comes back, I think it's interesting. I would play Fournette with Evans. I think you could play multiple of these guys together without Brady and take their floors, like with Gronk and Evans last week without Brady if you did that. And that's kind of where I'm leaning right now.
John, talk about the Rams backfields. Akers looked really good as just guy on the couch watching the game. He played basically half the snaps there. Akers versus Michelle. Now the price, they're the same essentially on DK. We're looking at 5.5 for Akers. Michelle is actually cheaper at 5.3. Specific to FanDuel, same sort of deal. 5.7 for Akers, 5.3 for Sonny Michelle. Do you have a preference amongst those two?
Well, we're seeing Akers' role grow each and every week. Sonny Michel's basically getting Darrell Henderson again, or I guess he would be the one getting Henderson or Wally pipped, because Michel handled 91% of the team's backfield touches in the 5 games leading up to Cam Akers' return. Because remember, that's when Darrell Henderson was injured. He came back for 2 of those, but was seldom used. And then the next week didn't get the touch until the 3rd quarter, and then injured on that 1 touch. So they just gave every single touch to Sonny Michel from that point forward. But then in the 2 games with Akers available since he's come back, we've seen his role grow, thus shrinking Michel's. And that's what we expected. It's what we talked about last week. Michel, for instance, in week 18, down from 91% stretch that I talked about of backfield touches to 73%. And then in the wildcard game, below 40% at 39%. So overall, like, we again expect Akers' role to grow. They even used Akers as they did not Michel, splitting him out wide. We saw how good he looked from the backfield. And so that's makes the Rams offense and this matchup so interesting, because now they suddenly have an explosive rushing attack to go along with anything that could counter in the passing attack as well. So yeah, Akers is a great play, but also, as you've already noticed, on DraftKings, he's really, really cheap. Like, they got the price wrong. And so everyone's going to play him as well.
Rich?
Yeah, I'm still a little worried about just how successfully they're going to be able to run the football here. Although they've been successful, recently down the end of the season. I mean, the Bucs got healthy on defense and they absolutely shut down the run again and bullied the Eagles out of the run. The team that was the best running team in the NFL the back half of the season. So still a little bit worried that it's just not a matchup that's conducive for a lot of upside. The price is right. And, you might get a little bit of the pass catching equity from Akers that you wouldn't get over Sonny Michel. I mean, his targets were down the field targets last week, 2 targets. One was from Odell, but he had the one where Stafford, they kind of misfired. He dropped it. It wasn't a perfect throw, but Akers did drop it. But you like those running back air yards, right? Getting those wheel routes and those upside targets, not just the tertiary dump offs. I like the passing game a lot for the Rams here. We saw in the first game too, effectively. It just comes down to if Stafford protects the football. I mean, in games where he doesn't throw an interception, he averages 24 fantasy points per game. And then last week, people will talk about, he was getting kind of nursed along. I mean, the game script didn't really call for them to throw, but I mean, he completed 77% of his passes, 4th highest rate all season. He also averaged 11.9 yards per pass attempt. That was his highest rate in a game since week 1. I mean, he would have absolutely decimated the Cardinals if that game was close. And he still got there for over 20 fantasy points. So I do think that with just the Bucs being an inherent pass funnel, we know that that's true every week, that the Rams are going to have a game plan, and they torched them the first game. I understand it was a Deshaun Jackson game that he came out off the kind of those where he didn't play like up until that point. And they're just like, oh, we have Deshaun Jackson. He went out and just like, caught 2 deep balls, and the Bucs were down defensive backs that time. They didn't have Jamil Dean got hurt in that game. He only played 12 snaps. Sean Murphy-Bunting didn't play. But definitely sets up to be a passing game for the Rams, which means Cooper Kupp and Odell Thielen, doing his thing. And our Tyler Higbee just keeps getting targets, man. It just happens every week. I mean, it was a moderate game last week. So only had 18 targets, but he had another 22% of the team targets. He has 20% of the team targets in his past 3 games, 21% team total over the past 5 appearances. And the Bucs were a team that did give up production to tight ends all season long. 25th in catches per game, 21st in catch rate. Dallas Goedert had 12 targets last week. It'd be another Higbee week again.
He also had 2 drops, so his ceiling is even higher than what the box score shows. 2 quick things. One, if you're telling me we can fade Cam Akers because you think the matchup is still too good for the Bucs, that's okay. I would love to fade Cam Akers because we know Sonny Michel got both carries inside the 10 and on the goal line. So like, if we're fading who we perceive to be the highest rostered running back, and Sonny Michel is going to get goal line carries, assuming Akers' role does not expand to that this upcoming game, that's great. I would love to fade the highest rostered running back in a 4-game slate. So I would love to do that. Also, a little bit of add-on to Stafford. I kind of like Stafford as well because it's not clearly the whole piece of the puzzle. Everything's just a small piece of the puzzle, but there is a bit of a tale unfolding because teams actually stopped blitzing him over the last 4 games of the season when he was struggling with multiple turnovers like Rich talked about. But on Monday, the Cardinals, for whatever reason, blitzed him on a season high 50% of his dropbacks, and he went 7 of 9 for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns against the blitz. In this previous matchup against the Bucs, they blitzed him on 31% of his dropbacks, and he went 9 for 11 for 91 yards and 1 score. So Todd Bowles can adjust, and I expect he probably will, but the difference is the Rams can actually counter with a running attack too, whether it's efficient or not. So overall, I think all roads kind of lead to a very good game for Stafford.
Rich, you're starting a GPP lineup with Stafford and Kupp or Brady and Evans. Gotta pick one of those two.
Stafford for sure.
Oh, really? Just snap call. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this isn't like a super ceiling game for Brady. I just feel like that it's kind of where we are with him right now in this roster. Like they've got to be really perfect. And I don't know if they really can be. I feel like this is as vulnerable as they are. And I'll definitely eat my words, probably, like I said, going against Brady, but it feels like they're in there's just so many injuries, man. Eventually it has to catch up and like really impact them. And I felt like the Rams were really one of the more undervalued NFC teams coming into the postseason.
I would go Stafford, Kupp, and Higbee because remember, we're all trying to trump the Allen, Mahomes lineups that everyone's going to come in on. And so like even in a 2-game, even especially I should say in a 4-game slate, we need to make sure like if we're winning, we're going over the top. Thus we need the touchdowns to Higbee. We need the touchdowns to Cooper Kupp. And so like I'm going with those two, even if you want to go Kupp and Beckham, we need all the touchdowns we can get to fight off Allen, Mahomes lineup. So I'm double stacking those quarterbacks. I don't think you need to double stack Ryan Tannehill because it's going to be so low rostered. Every piece basically, except Derrick Henry, that you don't need to do that, even a single stack. But with Stafford and Kupp, like Kupp's going to bring the ownership. So I'm definitely adding someone else to that mix.
John, you got the Rams +3 versus Tampa?
I'm not confident. I don't have a pick. I don't like this game. I can't pick against Brady. I would like to, but I can't pull the trigger. So I actually don't have a bet on this one.
You have a take, Rich?
Yeah, I like this to be the kind of the upset of the weekend. I don't feel like Bills doesn't count because the whole public's on the Bills now.
Well, they're also the favorite, aren't they? On the Bills.
No.
Wait. Oh no, they go 1.5 points off. Never mind. I was flipping that in my head, but yeah.
But everyone's on. But there's a reason it already got bet down too. Like everyone's on. Like the Bills are very much the 49ers of last week. But the Bills were my Super Bowl pick. Remember in week 12. So
there it is.
I'll ride with them, but. I hate being with everybody, but I feel like the Rams are the biggest upset pick of the week.
Who was your week 1 Super Bowl pick? Did you have one?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay. Like some people like to say at the beginning of the year before the season starts, that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean,
I had 49ers Chiefs. And then when I adjusted for my like playoff only rankings, I finished with the Packers Chiefs, even though I still have 49ers futures out there. I don't think they get there, but I still got some 49ers futures out there.
By the way, if you happen to have a take, because you guys listen out there and you want to legally wager American dollars, and you're in New York, you're in luck because they're doing their absolute best to acquire some customers, offering some incredible deposit bonuses. BetMGM for one, a $1,000 deposit bonus. Use the promo code Grinders. You can click through our links. Go to RotoGrinders.com, go to sports betting, go to New York. That's just BetMGM. Like FanDuel's got $1,000 risk-free bet. Caesars Sportsbook, $300 free, a $3,000 match. DraftKings, a $1,000 deposit bonus. For the very, very brief period of time in Florida where we had sports betting, the Hard Rock and the Hard Rock only, no competition. So it was a $100 deposit bonus. Good luck. Yeah, the competition is awesome in New York. They want to acquire you. And if you guys have not yet signed up for New York, great bonuses out there. I would assume they are not going to last forever. So pounce on that. Again, check the RotoGrinders. Go ahead.
If you want to know like where everything's headed, by the way, just know New York did 150 million in bets at legal sportsbook in its first weekend. It took Connecticut 2 months to reach 130 million. Like the tides are turning. Wait till California gets it. Just wait.
Yeah, it's got to be coming soon, and I would imagine it's going to be. It's so wild, like how far we've come in so few years. Like we hear Al Michaels, like at the stadium, you see like Bet Sports and all that kind of stuff. And a few years back, I was in a soccer game over there in London, and like you could bet the game at the stadium. I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. It was like a window. You walk up and you bet the game there. You know, it's all on the up and up and that kind of thing. And I think we're kind of sort of headed that way. And I feel like I just saw the very first team of like an on-site betting spot. Was it Arizona? I could be wrong, but yeah, like people are doing it.
The Raiders have The Raiders have the booth in the walkway whenever you're walking to the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course. Yeah. in Las Vegas. But
I spent when I lived in Australia, I spent probably too much time in one of those like slot machine betting rooms. Like when the Warriors were in their prime without Durant, betting on teams to watch those games, because like bars, they were like at 7 a.m. and some bars just wouldn't play at American sports. And so you'd have to go to that like old smoke induced rooms like that to watch the games.
Were you betting like Australian rules football and rugby and things like that? What we did in Australia? I'm learning so much. I feel like
I was having a quarter life crisis. This is a story for another day, but I lived there for 2 years. I was not betting Australian rules football, although I would tell everyone that is still the best sport in existence, and everyone should watch it if they've never seen it. It is literally American football meets rugby.
It's a huge field, isn't it? Like I watch
Right.
it. It's like 14 on 4. How many dudes are playing that game? It's a lot.
I don't know exactly per team. I didn't really pick that up since there was always beers involved, but forward passing with rugby is literally what it is.
Yeah. Rich, do you have any Australian rules football stakes?
I don't.
Yeah. I
wish
don't
I
really.
did.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. I've seen like the clips and then like the no pads and they're pretty ruthless. It's a fun spot for sport.
We root for the Richmond Tigers in this house, so be careful.
I don't have a team to retort. The All Blacks, is that a thing? The Kiwis, is that not Australia?
The Kiwis
that's New Zealand.
That's right? New Zealand. That would be cricket. I do not. I tried partaking in cricket, but 7 hours into a match, you pretty much give up that sport. Very quickly.
Baseball was long.
Yeah.
All right. The best game, we saved it for the end. Bills, Chiefs, kind of teased it a couple of times throughout the conversation. 54.5 is a total. Kansas City is a 2-point favorite here. Man, Rich, I don't know where we start. I guess the key place is to start where we don't know what's going to happen, I suppose. Talk to me about the running back situation in Kansas City.
I mean, they're pretty fungible. We kind of see proof in that. With Jerick McKinnon, like I said, it just felt right, him doing that last week. Darrell Williams didn't practice today. Clyde Edwards-Helaire did, kind of stick a pin in that. Obviously, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back and it's him and Jerick McKinnon, it's probably a situation where Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in a similar spot with Darrell Williams, except for he probably has more goal line equity than he did splitting with Darrell Williams. If all three play, it's probably more of just a hodgepodge. I mean, Buffalo, we've seen them give up rushing production in the season, but it's to more like power run games. Not really what the Chiefs do. They do have a good offensive line, and it props to them for rebuilding it in a year after it got, kind of just fell apart towards the end of last season. But when these teams played early in the year, 20 touches for Chiefs backs, 86 yards, really nothing exciting. I mean, I'll wait and see like kind of what we have towards the end of the week, but it's not a situation where I'm really leaning towards having any excitement looking at any Chiefs running back.
John?
I would still lean. I want to see what everyone does. I would still lean McKinnon right now. I don't think that's recency bias, but I want to see what everyone does. I want to follow more news tea leaves. It's still early in the week, considering we're waiting for this one on Sunday afternoon. So yeah, that's where I can lean right now. What's interesting about the Chiefs offense though, one, I wonder where Patrick Mahomes stacks coming according to Josh Allen stacks. I imagine probably Josh Allen will get more ownership, especially since everyone knows the rushing upside and more importantly, what they did just last week, because you could paint a picture that, like the Chiefs only did that because of the Steelers offense. But even then, like the Chiefs, remember, like they came out lifeless, 64 yards for the first 17 minutes of that game. We're trailing 7-0, which we all forget at one point, just miserable. And then Mahomes, of course, rattled off 5 touchdowns in literally 10.5 minutes. And their approach, although they were explosive, their approach didn't change at all from what we've seen since week 9. Mahomes led the league in passing yards after the catch from week 9 on. And that's when the Chiefs became more conservative, but throwing this past or in that stretch from week 9 on, throwing 20 plus yards downfield on only 10.5% of his attempts. And that was the exact rate actually that he threw in the wild card game, only 4 of 39 attempts, traveling 20 yards downfield. And you wouldn't know it, but the Chiefs actually gained 269 of their 405 receiving yards after the catch in that playoff game. So they were still explosive, but they were not explosive the way we think. And that's what we believe the Bills can do. McKinnon even led against the Steelers with 106 yards after the catch. So I kind of think they'll lean on him more. But overall, yeah, I'm just curious where everyone's going to come in. We've seen Tyreek Hill let us down a few times now, even last week, even though he did lead the team in routes run. Still 557-1 isn't exactly the ceiling everyone paid up for. So I wonder how many people will jump on him again rather than chasing Travis Kelce. So yeah, I'm just kind of gauging because they're all good plays. They're all amazing plays.
It's interesting. I think it might be a site thing. And again, I have not run lineups and all that kind of stuff. Allen's a little bit more expensive than Mahomes. I think you're going to find the money for it. I suspect Allen will be more popular for the reasons you guys kind of laid out. As far as Tyreek, he's 8-2 on FanDuel. Kelsey is also 8-2 on FanDuel. And if you jump over to DK, like Tyreek is 6-6, which I don't think we've seen him that cheap all season long. And Kelsey is 6-5, which I feel like we have. But yeah. And also on the other side of that game, like this game's to be stacked for sure, is like Diggs at 6-5 on DK, which another thing, I feel like we haven't seen him that cheap all season long. 7-8 on FanDuel. Jump in here, Rich, as far as those key pieces, we always ask, is it a Hill week? Is it a Kelsey week? As far as the way how the defense aligned, the way they play defense, who do we think is more likely to have a peak game?
Yeah, we've seen kind of Tyreek now he has 5 or fewer targets in 5 of his past 7 games. We've seen the Chiefs too, as the part of their takeoff again in the back half of the season is when the jabronis are doing stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's when this Chiefs explosion started happening. You get the Jerick McKinnons and the Darrell Williams and the Byron Pringles. When those guys start like contributing and having splash plays, that's when you see the offense take off. And we've had more of those performances as the season's progressed than we did early in the year when it was literally just Tyreek or Kelsey every week. So that's something else too that's going on. It was Tyreek's first downfield touchdown on a downfield target since week 4. He had a 31-yard touchdown. His previous 5 touchdowns in between totaled 18 yards with a long of 8 yards. Like it's the Godfather meme. Like, look how they massacred our boy. Just
like a reverse Devo.
Yeah. Catching end zone targets. So it was refreshing to see him actually catch a downfield target last week for a touchdown, because that used to be like Tyreek's game, right? Like those 30+ yard touchdowns. So we used to just any given moment be able to cash in one of those.
Is that a cover 2 thing, or is that another dumb narrative?
No, I mean, that's a lot of teams trying to take a lot of that away, and the Chiefs moving him around and getting him more targets. They've missed a number of opportunities too. There were definitely a bunch of shot plays that were kind of like so close or just missed over that span. But it was nice to see them finally connect on, because like Daigle said, it hasn't really been the Chiefs' offense the back half of the season hitting those big downfield plays, like Mahomes creating like outside of structure and just catching someone with like a 60-yard pass. That really hasn't been the offense, and it really wasn't that way towards the end of last year either. But no Tre'Davious White in this. He's been there the last 3 times these teams have played. Maybe that gives a little bit of an advantage. I mean, Tyreek's had some big games, some high usage games. He had a huge game in the playoffs against them last year. He did have the 7 catches and 13 targets when they played earlier in the year. He's just another one of those guys like we talked about Kittle a little bit. Like, it always exists, right? Like, it doesn't matter how bad it's been going or if it's a little lull. Like, it always exists though. And that's kind of where Diggs is too. Like, both those guys, I mean, combined, they have 500-yard games this year. 2 for Diggs, 3 for Hill. Like, they haven't really had a lot of those big spike weeks. Tyreek does have 2 monster weeks when he's gotten there. He had the Eagles game, and then he had the Raiders game. But yeah, that's kind of where we are. Like, we know it exists for Tyreek at any given moment. He's always a scary fade, but like we talked about, like the Chiefs just not being like Mahomes got there last week, but it's still like you're not really just terrified of the boogeyman anymore.
Yeah, it's weird. It feels like it's happened like less this year. And like you said, talk about the peripheral pieces amongst the jabronis, and you can add in Buffalo as well too, like Manny Sanders and Davis and Beasley and McKenzie and Pringle and Hardman. Do you have a preference, or is it just like dart throwing basically?
I mean, Pringle's been the better bet in terms of just in terms of opportunity. But obviously, like we talked about, like Lazard and like some of those guys, like you just have to catch the touchdown.
Yeah, and we don't know who that's going to be. Like, there's really you can make a guess for sure, but it's hard to like project touchdowns. Obviously, opportunity little easier to project. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like Isaiah McKenzie, just hoping for a carry. We've seen now that's how they'll use him. He got 3 snaps at running back this past week, as that's what they're doing. They're making sure they have someone to attack in the running game. It's been Devin Singletary, but also just the fact that they're getting McKenzie more involved. This past game, we actually saw the flipping that we wanted to see. Gabriel Davis, 20 routes to Emmanuel Sanders, 17, and Isaiah McKenzie, 12 routes to Cole Beasley's 9. So overall, like, they're getting the guys we perceive as more explosive, more involved. Even in the last game that these two teams played, like, Cole Beasley wasn't involved whatsoever. Like, they didn't use him. And so, yeah, I kind of like sneaking in Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie as secondary stacks, ancillary stacks for Josh Allen if you go that route, especially since we've seen like Stephon Diggs' ceiling let us down weekly.
What about Singletary? You kind of mentioned him. Of course, he's worth talking about. He's basically taken over that backfield. 5'9" on DK on FanDuel. I believe he's 7'2". How in are you on that, John?
Yeah, I'm in on all of it. Even playing Singletary with Josh Allen, as we talked about a couple times the past 2 weeks, more so in this game because we saw last week, even in getting McKenzie involved as a running back for a few snaps, Singletary ran a route on a season high 80% of Josh Allen's dropbacks, handled 19 to 20 running back touches as he's been doing at the last 6 games when he's handled 84% of Buffalo's overall backfield touches. Also saw all 4 running back targets. Zach Moss wasn't involved in that role whatsoever. And so, bringing along Singletary with Allen, that's a unique way to get exposure here. And then Dawson Knox, like he's the one who, even in having 2 touchdowns, is still a good play. 88% of the snaps last week, led the team in routes run, 93% of Josh Allen's dropbacks, and had a 20% target share. So especially if they're expanding their target tree and they're getting everyone involved, that's like less reason to play Stephon Diggs unless we know he's going to come in under rostered. It doesn't seem like Stephon Diggs ever comes in under rostered though, unless it's games where Josh Allen also comes in not rostered. But overall, yeah, like bringing Singletary along, bringing Knox along, like all these guys are amazing plays. I would just make sure you pick 2 of them.
Rich, what do you have as far as the Bills?
Yeah, that's the thing with Diggs is because anytime the quarterback's highly owned, and Josh Allen always is highly owned, these guys come along for the ride, right? It's like his number 1 receiver is always going to come along for the ride.
Allen was 6% last week. This is something Rich brought up to me actually first. Playing Josh Allen, knowing that everyone was going to be patient and wait and use the late swap for like Dak and other quarterbacks, you could get Josh Allen at cheap for a game. We like the over, but everyone perceived like the cold narrative. Said, okay, I'll take 3% Josh Allen. That's fine. Let's see what happens. And, Mahomes answers, so no big deal. But Allen was 3% in like high stakes. It was crazy. But Diggs was still rostered like in double digits. So Diggs always goes along, even when Allen doesn't go along.
Yeah, you're not getting that 3% this week. Put a 0 behind it, maybe.
Yeah, big loss for weather narratives last week. Even in the Bucks game, that never happened. It just never happened. Never got there. By the time kickoff happened for the Bucks game, you wouldn't even know that there was anything. There was like a big monsoon storm there. And then there was no wind in that Buffalo game. And I mean, the Bills played a perfect game. They scored on there for all 7.
No turnovers, no punts, right?
Yeah.
First time ever?
Yeah, no, they kneeled out. So they had earlier in the season, they had the first game ever without a punt against Bill Belichick, and then they ran it back the second time. So yeah, they just played a pristine game. And what you like about Allen too is that the designed quarterback runs now just become a bigger part of the offense as the season's gone on, and they're just really leaning into that to end the season. He had another 66 yards rushing last week. I mean, he has 407 rushing yards over his past 6 games. His opening 12 games, he had 422. Anytime you can get a player that has that kind of ceiling, like he even has a higher ceiling than Mahomes. Then you have that's kind of like this matchup. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo has been hyper aggressive against Josh Allen. The 3 meetings they've had against the Bills, he's blitzed Allen on 48% of his dropbacks. So it was the 4th highest that week. 38%, which is the 2nd highest that week, and then 40% of his dropbacks, which is the 3rd highest rate that week. The first 2 matchups last year, they got to him because we've seen Allen be susceptible to pressure. I mean, even this year, he's 23rd in completion rate under pressure, 16th in yards per pass attempt, but he didn't get home in week 5. They were only able to pressure him on 10 of his dropback or 8 of his 30 dropbacks when they face in week 5. So even though they blitz 40% of the time, they pressured him 8 of 30 dropbacks. And, when he was able to be kept clean, 13 of 19, 213 yards, 11.2 yards per pass attempt, 3 touchdowns. Like if Spags is going to be aggressive and the Bills handle that again, like it's just going to be another open invitation to get kind of wrecked. And this Chiefs defense too is still like a team that just like they have to have takeaways. We saw the only game that they don't have a takeaway over their past 13 games is the Bengals game. And you've seen that, like when they don't get those takeaways, you give up 34 points, you give up almost 500 yards of offense. That, I still have a lot less faith in the Chiefs defense than I do in the Bills. And I think that's the separator here in this matchup. Because I think both offenses are excellent and everything checks all the boxes. I think the Chiefs will score more points than the 20 they scored in week 5 because they had 4 turnovers in that game. I don't think we're going to see 4 Chiefs turnovers, but I think when it still comes down to it, I still have a lot more faith in the Bills getting a stop or 2 than I do the Chiefs.
To add to that point, in that stretch, because from week 9 on, everyone cites that as when Kansas City changed their offense, but their defense as well. And they limited teams to 16.5 points per game. pressured opposing quarterbacks at the 6th highest rate in that time. And that could be true. They become a better defense. They did some things. They moved Willie Gay to linebacker, benched Daniel Sorensen, moved Juan Thornhill to safety. But you can also look, to Rich's point, at their schedule and say, well, they also played Jordan Love, Derek Carr twice, injured Dak Prescott, Drew Lock twice, Ben Roethlisberger, and then Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, who they struggled against. So overall, it probably goes down to their schedule as well. And they really haven't faced a real quarterback just yet, like Josh Allen.
Yeah, and neither of the Bills. I mean, the Bills has been a big thing,
Yes.
but they still have had an elite, even they're not giving up anything to those guys, which is crazy. But they definitely faced 2 top 10 quarterbacks all season. It was Mahomes in week 5 and then Brady. And Brady had a really strong game. He had 30 fantasy points in that game. So I think that outcome still exists here. I think this is set up to be kind of the barnstorm that people expect it to be because of the way the Chiefs are playing right now. But I still just don't believe that this Chiefs defense has totally flipped that switch. I think they're just living on the cachet of turnovers like Dallas was, right? Like the Dallas lived this way a lot this year. They play hyper aggressive, try to get turnovers. And that's what you have to do when you have the Chiefs defense, right? Like credit to them. Like you need to play aggressive. You don't have the back end pieces. So it's going to come down to, if Josh Allen can play a clean game, I think that they're going to have a tough time generating enough stops.
Yeah, if you do nothing, you're going to get shredded. So
Yes.
at least try to do something. Maybe you'll make something positive happen, a turnover or something like that, or a sack, and put them in a negative down in the down and distance scenario. But or you give them a touchdown, which you're going to give up anyway. So what's the problem? What's the difference? So you get a few positive scenarios. It makes a lot of sense, and it's a tough place to play too. Noted, Kansas City, one of the tougher places to play, playoff atmosphere, all that stuff. And I don't know how to quantify how that would affect Josh Allen and that Buffalo offense, but it's probably not a positive. All right, that is the 4 games. Give me this, John. You go first, and Rich. Single entry GPP, single entry. Give me the stack you're starting with. If you want to do like a game stack, a skinny stack, and it's a Wednesday night, I'm not holding you to it. Don't worry about it. You don't have to necessarily enter it. But what's the first thing that comes to mind to you that you think is this is not a large field single entry contest, 1,000 people? What are your thoughts?
I like Tannehill. I don't think I have the courage to play him in the very first game, knowing late swaps available with Josh Allen and Mahomes just waiting for me there. Like if you're in first place heading into the Sunday night, you're not in first place. Tournaments don't start until that game kicks off. Everything's going to change after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I can see myself, depending what happens on Saturday with Aaron Rodgers and the 49ers, I can see myself getting on Stafford if need be, because I do really like Stafford and think like on DraftKings, especially 300 yards and 3 touchdowns is in the range of possibilities. And that's what helps match Allen and Mahomes. I'll probably play around with Stafford stacks and still overstack Bills Chiefs pieces. But if you told me to pick one, I think I'd still rather come down to Mahomes knowing the field is going to go all in on Josh Allen. I still like that. And if you play Mahomes, you have to play Singletary, hoping he soaks up 2 touchdowns again from Josh Allen. So I kind of like Mahomes, his stacks, and playing Singletary with him, along with, Higbee and Cooper Kupp.
Same question, Rich?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm aligning as well. I mean, the 3 quarterbacks on Sunday, Stafford, Mahomes, and Allen,
Annoying.
Seem the best. Granted, like I said, I'm sure a bunch of Bucks people will come at me for this, but that's so be it. I just feel like the 2 Sunday games, they'll look like the most bangers, right? Like I think there is upside in the 2 Saturday games. Like I could see a path where Bengals and Titans get there because both those teams do allow big plays, and if the Titans don't, if like Henry's not back full strength, they don't run the football well, I think that they're going to set up to be able to have a good passing game. And then obviously the 49ers game, you can always get there too. But I'm more targeting these Sunday games, which like Daigle said, it makes it harder to kind of play your guys like Tannehill on Saturday on the 4-game slate. But, you got a lot of one-off potential. George Kittle on the 4-game slate will be a lot less owned than he will be on Saturday. So if you can hit that, a lot of people will be playing Kelsey and Dawson Knox, even a little bit of Higbee and Gronk on Sunday. So Kittle may be like the one-off guy I'm looking for on Saturday to kind of try to cash in. And then other than that, I like Arthur Juan in the early game and maybe a little Tyler Boyd.
I would also look at Bills Chiefs defenses because we've seen both these offenses struggle like recently in the last month this year. That was sort of the bias that ran into Dak stacks. It's like, like the Bucs defense scored 9 points against the Eagles. The 49ers scored 8 points, and that didn't make sense considering we saw the Cowboys fail time and time again. So I would definitely look at Chiefs, Bills defenses.
You can't stress enough from a DFS perspective how valuable it is to late swap. And there's also a lot of value in, like, if you say you play like just Chase and Brown against each other and they both put up like 150 and 2, like knowing that information is huge too. And like adjust your lineups accordingly afterwards. And maybe get off the goofy play you have lined in and move to the chalk, because now you're way ahead and people got to chase you down, and let them chase you down with something goofy or something like that. If you're locked in on 2 players, go ahead.
I mean, I had, after we talked about it, I had 3% Allen last week, and that told me I could play Cooper Kupp on Monday. Like, I didn't care about the ownership. It's like, I already got the 3% 42-point quarterback. What do I care? And then I just adjusted accordingly around it. So yeah, like you said, it literally tells you what you can do with the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, once you have the separator locked in, like then you're in control. Like you're obviously you're dictating what's going on, and if the chalk fails, so be it. Or you just have much more options as far as making lineups. Well, boys, we made it. The longest season, not officially over, but over from the perspective of the NFL Pick 6 show. Do appreciate y'all. Like, for real, I love doing this show. I feel always smarter having here you two guys. I'm happy to be the third sharpest guy in the room in this conversation. I hope we run it back again next year. Rich, John, it was an absolute pleasure on my end, RotoGrinders end. Thank you all for joining us. Tell the people, Rich, or feel free to give a send off as well, Rich, whatever you want to say, and tell the people where they can find your sharp football analysis. Oh, and what are you doing in the offseason? What do we have lined up as far as the DVR? We were talking about the pre-show. We're like, oh, we'll save it. We'll save it organically. What are the plans like the day after the Super Bowl, besides hibernating for like 30 hours or something like that?
Well, a little looser schedule already. I'm 3 episodes in succession, Dean. So I'm inching my way there for you. But yeah, we're going to watch a lot of movies, a lot of TV when we can get there. I mean, and listen, it doesn't stop. Prospect season will be right around the corner. So I'll be diving into that. Daigle, he's mercifully not waded into those waters, and he never should. Don't ever start. But that'll be around the corner here. Combine will be next month, so we'll dive right back into it. But I always say like, I'm going to take all this time off, and then the itch comes back after taking like a week off. But yeah, I always love doing the show. This is great. I love spending time with you guys every Wednesday night. It's a little, kind of gets the ball rolling on like kind of what I'm going to do during the week. Working with you guys, like you said, it's just a really good informative show. I'm glad we got to do it. Hopefully we get to run it back. Hopefully Dan Bach wants to bring us back again next year. And then you can still go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, find everything. All these game write-ups are open to anyone. You can check them all out. And then at Lord Reeves on Twitter.
John, the floor is yours.
Too much pressure. Yeah, you and Rich have sent me in different directions. Like, that's why I love doing this show. It's not only a first look for everyone to first wet their lips for the slate, but also like it's a blind spot show. Like, there's things that I don't see that Rich sees from a different perspective, and you as well, Dean, from your like MME perspective. So it helps me out a ton to do this show as well. I look forward, and I hope that we get the email from Dan Bach yet again. I think I always text Rich like a month before. It's like, hey, have you got an email from Dan yet? Making sure I'm not left out, because I genuinely love doing this show every single week. I never want it off my schedule. Having said that, I would stick around, because off-season plans, they're fast paced. You can follow at @Daigle on Twitter, because there's going to be a few announcements coming. One that's probably going to involve, Dan Bach yet again. So stay tuned for that. Having said that, play Brian Harmon this week. That'll be a little hint. And then, also a good football show. You can subscribe there. But overall, I won't be in prospect season. I will be in draft season with draft props and game theory and notes and everything. But I also will be in best ball season. So that's going to start in a couple of weeks. Like Rich, I get to itch as well. You lay down and take a few naps, and then you're like, okay, this needs to start again. Otherwise, we don't know how to fill our free time. So yeah, just stay tuned. Lots of things coming up. But overall, I think a good season. We made it through the longest season ever, or at least I think we're going to make it there. We still got a couple weeks left. And this was genuinely the most fun I have all week. I love doing this show. So thank you, Dean, for everything.
Likewise. Thank you. And thanks to Devin, producer Devin, for putting up
Devin,
the show. And thank you, Devin. We can talk some of my ear whenever I goof something up, and gets the graphics all right. So do appreciate Devin as well. And RG for hosting this show. And thanks for watching. Yeah, because if nobody watched, nobody listened, then like, what's the point? It's just 3 dudes sitting around talking, I suppose. I guess it could be helpful for our own personal lineups, but
anyone can get hot.
Yeah, we should have just said that. Like, shout out to the dude in the comments last week. Hey man, it's the playoffs. Anyone can hot. Anyone can get hot. Just click the buttons. Whatever. You'll figure it out. Play anybody you want. There you go. Again, for real, a thankful appreciation to those watching us on YouTube and downloading and all that kind of stuff. while you're at it, hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on notifications. Of course, there's going to be content all up to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, the big game on RotoGrinders. Don't want to get hit with that one. I don't know what that costs these days if you say Super Bowl, but it is the big game technically. All right, we got to step aside and get out of here. We took up another hour and a half of your time. We do appreciate y'all listening all season long here to the NFL Pick Six Show. I presume we shall see. Hopefully, we'll be back next season. That, for the very last time, was Rich Hribar this season. For Sharp Football Analysis, John Daigle, NBC Sports, a good football show podcast. Shout out to producer Devin. I was Dean. This was RotoGrinders. We're out of here. Holler.